Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's AMA session. We have a very distinguished guest, Mo, here from Celer. Mo, you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Thanks for the invite, Alvin. Always great to chat with you guys and to share what we have been building.
Sure. And my name is Alvin. I'm from BNBChain. Today, we are going to talk about the bridge for BAS. And some of you may have heard like BAS is our BNB application sidechain. We first spoke about BAS at the start of the year when we kind of rolled out our 2022 roadmap. And we were very clear on the vision, right? Which is today we have about 1.5 million daily active users. And obviously we want a lot more, right? But we don't want just like 1 or 2 million more users. We're talking about ushering the next billion users onto the blockchain world. And hopefully a lot of them will be through BNBChain, of course. So how do we actually scale this? And one of the ways we talked about is, what we call horizontal scaling. And that's allowing large applications, right, to actually have their own side chains. And building your own sidechain is easy, but having the modules like bridging, the infrastructure, and not just that, like the liquidity, right, in the marketplaces and so on. How do we create such an environment for applications to build? And that is when we came up with the idea of a sidechain, where today you can actually have your own sidechain alongside BNB Smart Chain, which is the BSC you're familiar with. And a very important, critical part of that, this whole architecture on why BAS is so important is because there is a native bridge today, right, that allows users to bridge these tokens, NFTs between the BAS and BSC. So suddenly now you're able to have your own blockchain, your own gas token, your own tokenomics, right, your own set of validators, but at the same time, having the easy access to all the liquidity and infra that is on BSC itself, right? And the bridge therefore plays a critical part of why this is so important and so beneficial to projects. So I'm not going to steal the thunder. Today, the main focus will be on the bridge for BAS or between BAS and BSC. So I'll leave it to you, Mo, to bring us through, and Mo is going to show us a little demo on that as well.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. This is Mo from Celer. Great to be here as always. And I think Alvin just gave a very, very good segue for kind of talking about the topic we want to kind of chat about today. As we all know that like blockchain is scaling for sure, but like right now as a kind of entire blockchain ecosystem, and especially pioneered by the BNBChain and the BAS movement, basically. We're moving to a multi-chain world, right? So like, we want to have scalability to sustain more than 1 million users on a daily basis. And the way to kind of scale this up is not by kind of continuing adding capacity on a single chain, because for a single chain, no matter how kind of fast it is, as long as it's still a decentralized system, if you still want to have a fair amount of decentralization in the chain itself, you cannot really kind of surpass a certain threshold because of the fundamental communication delay between all the nodes that is participating in the consensus process. Now, to expand that capacity is by spinning up more chains that is connected with kind of the main chain, which is in this case, the BAS and the BNB chain here. The question then to us is like, okay, we have more capacity, but what about like the fact that they are kind of if we could just simply scale up like more different chains using the same architecture, we're in a different situation, right? So like we're in a difficult situation where the states and the liquidity and maybe even the users are isolated from each other, right? So like how do we merge the isolated users together into a very, very harmonious kind of ecosystem is a question that we're trying to solve in Celer, to try to kind of basically harvest the available liquidity using this kind of a comes with this horizontal scalability by enabling interoperability between all the different blockchains. So if we look at the history of computer science, this in the Web 2 world, we started with single core computing, back in the 70s. And then in the 90s, we start to kind of move into this multi-core architecture, right? So like now we're essentially for BNBChain, the BNBChain is essentially transitioning from kind of a single core blockchain computer to this multi-core generation, which is like a generation defining here. Now, talking about interoperability, like what we are actually kind of doing here when we talk about interoperability, The key thing Celer enables is a very, very generalized message passing between different blockchains. And in this particular case, between BNB chain and all the BAS associated with the BNB chains. And Celer itself is built as a blockchain itself, like it built with the same foundation that BNB was built on, which is like using Cosmos and Tendermint-based SDK to act as kind of a central message gateway to connect all these different blockchains and sidechains together, so that whenever there's something happens that wants to kind of pass information from one chain to another, a message relay can be done through this middle blockchain and via a layer 1 level consensus process. But at the same time, the message passing can also be done using kind of the process of an optimized rollup like process. We'll kind of talk about this message passing a lot more later. But there are applications built on top of this very, very generalized interoperability platform. One of them is cBridge. cBridge is a very easy to use asset bridge that is allowing user to move assets, tokens like NFTs and fungible tokens around multiple different blockchain systems. Right. So like to date, cBridge has processed more than $7.2 billion transaction volume for about 150K users across 29 different chains. And we're very excited here to building the BNB chain and BAS sidechain together with all the BNB chain community and developer community together to kind of promote this multi-core architecture for BNB chain. Of course, there are other exciting use cases that we can kind of talk about later, but this is just as a quick intro.
Cool. Yeah, definitely lots of exciting lineups coming up, both for BAS and also for Celer. I've been looking at Celer's updates on Twitter, and it seems like there's a lot going on. So we'll probably leave that to the back, and we'll talk about like Celer, its plans, and what it thinks about the future of interchain operability and also the experience to users. I'm particularly very passionate about that because today I think the world of interchain operability in terms of the UX and UI to users, I think there's still a lot more that the blockchain world needs to do, but we can talk about those later. So Mo, why don't you maybe bring us through the demo? I'm not sure what's the best way to do it. Let people see like what the bridge in for BAS looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Seeing is believing, right? So basically for every BAS that's spin up, Celer Bridge is part of the BAS, like a build out. So basically, whenever you're kind of launching a BAS, the benefit of using BAS, if you're comparing BAS with a lot of other different kind of subnet solution, is that there is a built-in bridge that is ready to use on day one. So basically whatever the fungible token you want to bring, whatever your non-fungible tokens you want to kind of a bridge between different blockchain ecosystem, between different BASs actually also is something that it comes with the BAS and supported by Celer. So let me just kind of quickly share my screen and jump into a quick demo to let everyone get a feeling of how bridging NFTs and bridging fungible token work in the for the bridge.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point because I've tried different blockchains and not every time it's that easy to actually bridge right between those chains and other chains. And I know a lot of projects have been trying to build their own side chains or their own private chains as well. And look, maybe some people may say oh, it's easy to build a bridge, but it's hard to maintain and also maintain the security of it, right? So it's always easy to build things, but it can be easy to break things as well. And that is when you want to rely on providers or builders who have experience in this kind of things. And I think that's one of the main advantage of BAS, right? Which is when you spin up a BAS, a lot of these facilities and modules like the bridge is already there.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is where things are extremely exciting for BAS. Well, now let's see it in action. So in this demo, what you're seeing right here is basically a very, very simple user interface for BAS testnet. So now you have the source chain as a BSC testnet, and then you have the destination chain as one of the testnet that is spun up, in the BSC world. So you can basically select whichever source chain you want to select, and then whichever destination chain you want to select. And just to demonstrate, like for the fungible token, I want to kind of quickly show two things, right? So like the first thing is really about bringing kind of the native BNBChain token from like BSC to BAS, which is like native available. Whenever you spin up like a BAS sidechain, this functionality will be there. So like, let's say you want to kind of bring in just like one BNB token to this testnet, and this testnet is using essentially kind of a real world simulation data. The reason there's a difference between the testnet token, between the source amount and the destination amount, is really because like the bridge itself is also covering the gas fee and making airdrops of the gas tokens for the users on the destination chain. So you get the additional benefit of like, if someone wants to kind of try out your application, they can bridge some asset that is not your native gas token in, but they will automatically get some gas token when the bridged fund arrives. So it's very, very smooth on ramp for the users to kind of actually try out BAS-based applications because they don't need to have like the gas token to start with. And as long as they're coming from the BSC, world, they are kind of they're all good in terms of like interacting with the application. Now we're kind of doing the bridge, and that will just kind of click the confirm on the MetaMask. It's very, very simple process, and transaction is just submitted. Now, for BSC and BS, one thing I want to kind of highlight here also is that BSC, the developer community is building out a thing called a fast finality. So like, even though you saw it's a 5 to 20 minutes for general chains, you can see that the entire bridging process, as we are speaking, has completed basically. Like if you look at, that is fast. So if you look at this, it's basically transferring one BNB, to the bridging system, and then on the sidechain, what the user is receiving is a ERC20 representation of the BNB. So like now the user received this corresponding amount of BNB. So very, very easy to use here. Now, let me switch gears here and just switch this to the application sidechain. So now your user is on the application sidechain. He has some tokens to play with the sidechain and kind of play with the entire application, be that gaming or be that DeFi world and all that different things. What you can do here is to actually kind of be able to bridge back some of the tokens that are issued on the BAS to the BSC world, right? So like basically, for example, this is a native token that is issued on the BAS sidechain, and you can just it's as simple as bridging it in. You can just like bridge it back from one side of the chain to the other. So
yep.
Also,
this is great. I mean, I don't know about the rest, but I think it's simple. You just choose a source, a destination, and I think everyone here has seen like how fast and how seamless this experience is. It's great.
Yep. So it should be arriving any moment, basically.
There is a question from someone. So like, in this case, you're transferring BNB, say from BSC to the ARS BAS, right? Like, yep. Is it then does it arrive as a wrapped BNB? Is it a native BNB?
Right. So that really depends on the choice of the sidechain, right? So like if the sidechain choose to use the BNB as their native gas token, then one BNB transferred from the BSC will be arriving on the sidechain as one BNB, which is not wrapped, but like the native gas token. But if they choose to use, let's say in this particular case, the ARS like token as the base token of the BAS, the gas token of the BAS, then when the user receives the receive the token, they're receiving a ERC20 representation of BNB, which is like essentially the wrapped BNB. Yeah.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Cool. And does this work for NFTs?
Yes. So just to quickly show that, okay, here you can see that the a ARS token has been transferred and received by the user here. It's like very smooth experience. So it's kind of this is how the user experience look like when we're talking about the fungible token transfers. Now for C-Bridge, it's not only just for fungible token transfers, right? So like it's actually working. It actually works perfectly also for non-fungible token transfers. For non-fungible token, we want to highlight two things here. So non-fungible token bridging comes with like two flavors. One is what do we call a multi-chain native NFT, right? So let's say basically you have you want to issue a new NFT, but you don't want your newly issued NFT to have the concept of, okay, this NFT is issued only on one chain, but cannot move to the other. Let's say like if the NFT issuance is on BSC, and you can do the bridging. But how the bridging works is that the user will lock their NFT in a vault contract inside of the bridge, basically, and then a new NFT token, which is a representation of the original one, will be minted on the Testnet chain. So this works great for legacy NFTs. But if you're issuing a new NFT, you might want to kind of just consider the capability to issue a multi-chain native or cross-chain native NFT, where there is no concept of a source chain per se. So every chain of the supported chain is actually a source chain or native chain for that particular NFT. So whenever you're moving from one chain to another, the NFT is essentially burned on that source chain and minted the new on the Testnet chain. So it's always the authentic original copy of the NFT without the kind of the feeling of a representation or shadow copy of that particular NFT. So this is something that the Celer NFT bridge comes with as well. So if we're looking at maybe this particular NFT, which is like multi-chain NFT, we can kind of see how it works in action. So let's see, like it's a very similar experience actually, like comparing to doing fungible token transfer. It's just the source chain, Testnet chain, select your NFT that is supported in the click transfer. That's it. So if we look at the source chain transaction for this cross chain native NFT, what we're seeing here is that instead of locking this cross chain NFT up, you're essentially kind of burning this NFT on the source chain it is transferred to, and then kind of minting this particular token on the destination chain. So it may take some time because like the NFT logic here is a little bit more complicated comparing to just the simple fungible tokens. So yeah,
you mentioned burning, but you also mentioned locking in a vault. So can you clarify like the difference between the two, or like is it the same thing?
Yeah, so like for burning of for burning and minting, it's really working for the cross-chain native NFTs, right? So like you have an NFT that doesn't really have the concept of an original chain or like the native chain. So it works really well for new NFT issuances. Like if you want to issue a new NFT that is truly having true cross-chain mobility, we would suggest that this is where to go. But if you're having some legacy NFT you want to kind of move and bring into your blockchain, let's say you want to bring Bored Ape to your BAS chain, you can also do that by supporting the Bored Ape bridge between the Ethereum to your BAS sidechain directly. So like a copy of the Bored Ape will be kind of represented on the BAS chain. Right. So, but while the original copy of the Bored Ape will be logged in the Ethereum in the original chain. So it's more like one is for legacy to be NFT solutions, and the other is really kind of for this new generation of the NFT that is truly having multi-chain mobility.
Got it. And so do users or the projects get to choose like what's the method, or for Celer C-Bridge it chooses one kind over the other?
For existing NFT, the only method to use is actually the NFT bridge. So basically, like the NFT will be locked and then kind of minted. And for new project, it's a kind of a burn and mint process. So like for new projects that it's flexible for the project to choose whether they want to still have a concept of original chain or have the built-in functionality for that.
Okay.
So yeah. So if you look at this transaction here, now the same token ID 5 NFT is minted on the sidechain, on the BAS sidechain. So it's very, very smooth process and they're pretty fast as well.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
It's cool. Very cool.
So yeah. So just to kind of quickly show the slight difference here is if so like this CNN, the Cinecorn kind of example NFT here, this one we're kind of representing this as kind of the legacy NFT where it has the original chain which is on the BSC, and once you want to kind of bridge it, instead of burning this on the source chain, you actually are locking this up in a bridge contract, and then a new representation of the Cinecorn ID4 token will be minted on the BS testnet. So yeah, that's basically how this would work. Let me just show this quickly here. So you can see that in this transaction, this basically transferred from the token address from the testnet user to this contract. Now, what this contract is essentially a vault contract that is representing the bridge. Now you can see that there are four CNNs here, and then you can see like the token ID number 4 is actually recently deposited and logged into this particular bridge vault contract. And when the user transfer it back, or whoever holds the represented NFT and transfer it back, the original copy of the ID number 4 CNN will be unlocked and released to the user. So that's basically how the process looks like.
Cool. Very smooth process for those who are dialing in, and I'm sure most of you who have dialed in have tried some kind of bridging experience, and I would say this is actually smoother than most other bridging experience that I've had, which is cool. And there are developers who dialed in as well, right? So if you had missed, last week we actually did one of the demos of a game, the first game that's built on BAS, right? And I think they also showed like some of the bridging, right? And that is using Celer's bridge as well. On an in-app experience, right? So that's pretty cool as well. Do check it out, because I think what Mo showed was from a user perspective, right? If you want to do your own bridging, but if you are developing a game or other kind of marketplaces and stuff like that on the BAS, you can actually integrate Celer's bridge and make it like very seamless for your users, right? To be able to bridge their assets between your BAS application to BSC and vice versa.
Yeah. I think this is like extremely important, the point that Alvin brought up. So like the entire C bridge is entirely permissionless. So you as the developer can actually directly interact with the smart contract. Doesn't have to be using this user interface at all. And also like if you don't want to kind of directly get user exposed to the smart contract, we also provide a very, very detailed API documentations for you to kind of use a pre-built widget. So one way to look at this entire user interface I just showed is essentially that widget. And you can have the exact same user experience to allow users to see the history, select different tokens, all built into your web application. So it's definitely possible to do that. And in fact, we have a lot of partners that are already leveraging the capability to build their own bridging interface without actually guiding user to this. Like they're using a C bridge inside of the application without kind of breaking the experience or breaking the user flow, which is quite important.
Cool. So All right, now that the demo is done, there's a few questions I'm collecting from the users. And for everyone dialing in, do remember, like, if you have any questions, please feel free to fill it in the Google form. I believe it's in the tweet itself, right? And I'll be reading those questions as well. So let's come to, it's been a few months you've been working on this breach for the BAS. Like, what are some of the unique considerations that you thought of, right? And is there anything that's unique to BAS versus like building a breach for other kind of L1 L2 chains?
I think there are several things, right? So I will kind of start with the technical side, and then kind of talk about security side, and then kind of finally wraps at kind of ecosystem side. So from kind of a technical perspective, one thing when we start to connect with different blockchains is to understand the finality assumptions of different blockchains, right? So like for bridges, the biggest thing to consider is that whenever a bridge confirms a transaction, basically saying, okay, this thing happened on this chain, and then there's some information needs to be related to the destination chain, right? So we better be sure, like as a kind of an entire bridging ecosystem, that this like source chain information cannot be reverted arbitrarily, right? So like there's no way to kind of essentially have a very, very long range 51% attack. This is like extremely important because this actually determines the entire kind of a process here. Now, the good thing about BS and the unique thing about BS is that the entire BNB's tech stack has been kind of a lot of the developer community has been pushing towards something called fast finality. So this is very important that we're looking forward to this very much. That will kind of greatly increase the speed of finality essentially, and the result of this, the direct result of this, is a much better user experience when interacting with all the BS different chains, right? So like you can think of the entire BNB chain plus BS as a very, very fast multi-core CPU for like different for blockchain ecosystems. Comparing to interacting with other like blockchains. So it's kind of a very tight-knit ecosystem there. Now, kind of transitioning into the security side of things. So for connecting new application chains, right? So like we're seeing the growth of this multi-chain interoperability becoming more oriented towards the application blockchains, and one consideration from the bridge's perspective is to ensure a fair amount of ensure good interoperability, but also a fair amount of isolation between different application blockchains in terms of the security isolation, security firewalls. That's like basically where we also put a lot of considerations. Let's say whenever for some of the entire BS ecosystem is very permissionless, right? So like how do we kind of incorporate newly spin up like BS chains while ensuring the entire asset on BSC and on other BS is like fully secure? Is a very interesting question, right? So like, for example, if it's almost like having a new onboarding process. Let's say if there is some BSC that is having just like 3 nodes that are running the BAS, then it's something that not going to be supported by the bridge by design. It's not kind of a human decision, right? So the bridge only accept like a well decentralized and kind of a well maintained BAS sidechain to be kind of incorporated into the system by having kind of the bridge's own governance process to kind of accept and onboard new chains. So it's very important that we have that consideration. And then finally, what we have found out is like the BS ecosystem has been super vibrant, and there are a lot of interests that are kind of moving into the BNBChain and BS combination here. And I think Alvin is kind of leading greatly on that front. And we're seeing a lot of developer interest. So if you're considering scaling up your application, if you're considering having a very great interoperable environment with all the different blockchains in the BNB chain, I would suggest BS is the one to look at. So so that's kind of like the feelings that we had during the past couple months.
Definitely, and thanks for saying some good things about BNBChain, and I for one am very proud of the fact that BNBChain has the most number of daily active users, right? And I think Nansen actually put out a report a few weeks ago where like a huge proportion, right, of the on-chain transactions on L1s actually belong to the BNBChain. But like I said, like we're not satisfied here, right? Because we want to usher in the next billion users, and this is the way to go. I think you did mention about that BAS is permissionless, but there are certain controls like which BAS has a breach work with. So I think this is where I think over time we also find a balance between how do we decentralize and make things permissionless, but at the same time have controls, right, that support the users. Because if the breach is enabled in every BAS, then some of the users, whether it's they may meet into projects, they may not be as good, and this is actually bad for the user experience. So that balance, I think, is something that we will figure out over time. But great call out there. So I want to understand. There's another question. What about direct BAS to BAS bridging? How are you thinking about it?
Yeah, I mean, direct BAS to BAS bridging is already supported and built in as part of the platform, right? So the only thing is, as I mentioned, like as long as we see all the BS as a kind of meeting the security standard to be incorporated in the bridge. So like all these communication will be smoothly happening between all the BSs as well. Like you can transfer USDC easily from one BSC to another. You can transfer BNB easily from one BAS from another. And then the non-fungible token is also like the supported here. Like if you're releasing a non-fungible cross-chain non-native non-fungible tokens, that as I mentioned, so it has true cross-chain mobility that will natively support all the BASs. That's like kind of fully decentralized and fully secure, basically.
Cool.
Yeah.
So tell us about the challenges you faced, right, while building this project. It's never easy building. So we'd love to just hear from your insights, like what were some of the challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do see some pretty great challenges here. That is essentially like there are so many different features that the community are requesting, and there are a huge amount of developer interest in terms of the generalized interchain communication platform that we built. So the challenge here is really hiring. That's like the biggest challenge that we have, like to have enough manpower to actually support the growing community for BS and also like for Celer here to kind of allow more application use case to start to build on top of Celer to support and educate the developers as well. So that has been really kind of a big challenge. But we're we're kind of ramping up our team here and to kind of support to have a more broader developer advocate and support team here. And as we can see for the Celer interchain message mainnet launch we just did a couple of weeks ago, we already have right out of the gate we already have 9 different developer partners building different exciting use cases like a cross-chain one-click cross-chain swap, the cross-chain governance from future swap, and a lot of other different kind of use cases that are being built using Celer interchain message framework. So but we're continuously trying to drive towards that direction to kind of get more adoption and merge the interoperability gap in this entire blockchain ecosystem.
Cool. So just building on that, because you mentioned about the mainnet release and so on. So you touched a bit about what you're thinking of for the company, but what is a vision, right, for Celer in the end? And it'll be good to maybe highlight some of the things on the roadmap, right, for this year and next.
Yeah, absolutely. So so a couple of things, right? So the biggest thing is that we see the multi-core future for the entire blockchain ecosystem, and we want to be kind of the crucial communication bus between all the kind of individual cores, individual computer cores in the blockchain ecosystem, and that have been showing kind of a really great traction So for example, I can kind of quickly show here, there are various different kind of application use case you can use to build with Celer interchain message framework. An example of that is like, for example, this chain hop app that is from our ecosystem here. For many users, onboarding new chains and kind of getting tokens from different chains is kind of hard, right? So like now with this, they basically need to, okay, I have X token on A chain and I want to swap to Y token on B chain. I need to swap X token to some token that is bridgeable from these two chains. And then I will bridge this manually, and when it arrives on the destination chain, I need to get some destination chain gas token, and then make a swap there. So it's very, very complicated process. It hinders a lot of onboarding process for the users from one chain to another, right? So, but here with the, for example, this app that is built based on Celer IAM, what you can do is you can essentially kind of have this capability to convert really kind of any token on Ethereum. There's like thousands of these to any token on BNB chain, for example, right? So like you can have like this kind of a one-click swap experience where from user perspective, they just need to click once, right? So like user doesn't have to be doing all the manual steps that I just mentioned. But at the same time, all of this transaction will just like automatically happen in the back end, and the user will receive the BNB token on the destination chain. So it's very, very easy to onboard like BNB chain and other different blockchains as well. So these are kind of a very, very strong applications that people haven't seen yet. And our developer community is building. So we're kind of trying to support that ecosystem of interoperability apps or cross-chain native applications. There are other use cases like if you have a protocol and wants to have a governance capability from multiple different chains, and aggregate these governance decisions into single chain and propagate the actual governance decision back to change the protocol parameters. We already have application builders build this standard solution for that, and also like things like cross-chain, lending, where you provide collateral on one chain and borrow on another, and the cross-chain yield aggregator, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of things, and the NFT marketplace is also a big one, where you can list your NFT on one chain and start accept bids and accept the purchase order from users. From all the other different chains in all the other tokens. Like you still get the token you want to accept. Let's say you list your token on BNB chain with BNB as the accepted purchase token, but another user on, let's say, Ethereum can buy this token with like a 1 inch protocol token essentially. So this is all the strong functionality that will be supported by the ecosystem. We're trying to build that future, right? So another thing that kind of a little bit more broad here is that we're seeing the interoperability platform as much more than just the message passing, right? So yeah, you can do message passing from chain A to chain B. That's great. But what's Celer differentiate here is that there's a middle kind of a smart chain, that is connecting different blockchains. So you can actually have a smart contract logic inside of the middle chain that is coordinating the message between different blockchains. And you have the capability to say, okay, I'm having one message passing from A to B, but in the middle, this message can be transformed based on the application, status or chain states between different blockchains in a global way. So this is very powerful. That is not available anywhere else, and we're kind of harvest that functionality quite deeply. And many of these applications already use that. Such as Cbridge, to kind of build a very, very efficient pricing and the liquidity utilization model. So that's kind of like the direction.
On that last point, like just trying to understand, like what kind of use case, right? If you can illustrate a simple use case, right, that would require the kind of middle layer.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I can talk about a use case that are widely used today, which is Cbridge. So Cbridge is actually built with that kind of functionality, right? So like in bridging system, one thing to always consider is how do you kind of make the bridging price work, right? So like let's say you have some USDC, you have some like USDC on one chain, let's say on BNB chain, and you have USDC on another chain. right? So like, you both have USDCs and user wants to transfer this USDC from this source chain to BNB chain. So there are some balances of these USDC in the liquidity pool for each side, right? So like, basically the user are adding USDC on one side and withdrawing USDC from another. So, the pricing between these two things are essentially kind of should be modeled as a stable swap, right? So like, because if you have like a lot of liquidity on one side and not enough liquidity on the other, the pricing slippage should be high so that you don't actually drain the liquidity and allow arbitrageurs to kind of push back liquidity in a more balanced way. So like that's kind of like the design goal here, right? But the problem about this is that if you just have a simple message passing, you will have a really hard time in simulating, the cross chain, the stable swap curve between different chains, because at any given time you only have information about single chain. You have to kind of pass information from one chain to another, and sometimes it's not kind of fast enough. You need to kind of make reserved balances and all that stuff. So this is where the utilization of liquidity becomes low and the user experience becomes worse. Now for Celer, whenever there's kind of a bridging request, the middle chain always has the full visibility of what is the liquidity balance on each of the different chains and can calculate essentially the pricing at the cross chain layer itself. So it's kind of doing the smart calculation there and relaying the information down the road. So like that's kind of like the functionality that enables a very high liquidity utilization and extremely low fees for the users on C-Bridge. So that's kind of like one example, but there are numerous other examples like that.
That's great. That's great. I think that's a great example of innovation in Web3, right? Because I think when Web3 is still very nascent, and we are seeing a lot of like very crude functions where, all right, we do this, and nowadays we're seeing more of this innovation where we're doing things smarter, we're doing things more efficiently, and this kind of innovation will go a long way. So that's pretty cool. And so you have, I'm not sure if you started with C-Bridge, like you started as a bridge, and now it seems like you're more like a bridge infrastructure provider of some sorts.
Yeah,
is
it's
it right
kind
to
of
say
a very generalized message passing cross-chain interoperability. Yes.
Right. Okay. Excited about the future. Hearing these plans, they're pretty great.
Yeah. Looking forward to.
Cool. So, all right, security has been the most frequently asked question when it comes to bridges these days,
That's right?
Because of all the recent things that have happened. Want to hear your thoughts, right? How are you thinking about the recent incidents, like why they happen, or what parts are susceptible, right, to hacking and so on, and how are you thinking about it from from the Celer bridge, especially for the BAS bridge perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to talk about that. So like, first of all, I want to kind of talk about like how the architecture of the C-Bridge works, and then kind of comments on a little bit more about the incidents recently. So how the Celer's have Celer's kind of interoperability platform, and also associated with that is C-Bridge, has a very, very unique security kind of a model that is combining I would say combining the best of the worlds. So what I mean by that is that as we kind of talked about, there is a middle chain that is sitting in between all the different blockchains. That is kind of the beating heart of Celer network here. The beating heart itself is actually a Cosmos-based blockchain. So it's having all the capability and the security properties of a layer 1 blockchain itself. So like whenever there's a message that is emitted from the source chain, this middle chain will first reach consensus on the fact that this message is happened, or this event happened on the source chain, and then generate a stake-weighted multi-signature. It's not just a simple multi-signature here. It's actually stake-weighted multi-signature, and store it on the destination chain. Store it on the blockchain itself to be passed on the destination chain. Right. So where this, comparing to, for example, MPC, simple MPC or multi-sig model, this is immediately much stronger because first of all, it is relying on Testnet true, consensus mechanisms that is used by all the Cosmos ecosystem applications and outside of the Cosmos ecosystem. Like, for example, Polygon has been using this, underlying layer for Cosmos, and also BNBChain itself is also kind of using that. So like the security is, the fundamental of security is very strong because it's relying on a well-tested consensus mechanism that is providing layer 1 security. And at the same time, they also provide the economic security here. That is in the sense that if there's one, validator of the blockchain, of the middle blockchain, is kind of acting maliciously, as long as it is smaller than the consensus bound, which is smaller than 2/3, so it will be slashed immediately and kicked out of the system, which is not available in any of the POA or multi-sig solutions. So it has like direct economic consequences if some validator wants to act maliciously in a unilateral way, right? So that's kind of something that is very strong. Now, you may ask, okay, bridging is extremely important. We see like, what happens if like the entire consensus fall apart? Let's say somehow the entire kind of a middle chain is maliciously taken over by some malicious parties. What can be done then, right? So there is also another security model that comes with the entire Celer architecture, which is the optimist rollup like security model. So in this optimist rollup security model, every message passed from source chain to destination chain will not be immediately executed on the destination chain, but instead it will be put into a quarantine zone for a mandatory quarantine delay, right? So it's almost like, if you're having kind of in the COVID era, we all understand how the quarantine works, I guess. So this quarantine message can then be cross-validated by each individual, what we call state guardian network, which is a validator node. By looking at what is the source chain message, whether the source chain message actually matches the destination message, and also the application themselves and the blockchain themselves can actually run a guardian or can actually run a watchtower to cross-validate this information as well. So like the capability to cross-validate the transaction in or cross-chain messages in this optimist rollup side model is much wider. Like, a lot of the different parties can cross-validate this, as well. And if there's any
does this apply to all transactions or only like those above a certain threshold?
Right. So like that's what I'm about to mention. Like basically, so this kind of a functionality is great because it's added the capability to pause a quarantined transaction if one of the watchtower sees, okay, it's not actually matching the source chain, right? But it also adds additional delay and additional mandatory delay. So how do we do this? Is like to combine the best of the tools. So for example, for C-Bridge, for lower kind of amount of transactions, it is directly relying on the Cosmos-based consensus. But for a higher amount, higher than a certain threshold, it will trigger the two-phase commit process or to trigger the optimistic rollup like security process here. So it's kind of reaching the balance of the best of the tools, right? So aside from the kind of this architecture considerations, there are things like rate limiting on build on chain. It's not like rate limiting that is off chain, but it's actually rate limiting on chain. And we also have kind of a risk control monitoring for the system continuously. So things like one transaction and empty out the entire bridge reserve, like what we saw in many cases for these kind of bridging hacks, is just not possible, like from kind of a blockchain or smart contract perspective in Celer, right? So it's more than just like the architecture security, but also some of the implementation security and operational security are all very important in building a multi-chain kind of interoperability platform. And we also, from day one, we also seek help from the white hat community. So we have a standing bounty on Immunify worth of 2 million. For anyone who finds any critical vulnerability that affecting like assets in the C-Bridge. So we're really kind of open and welcoming kind of the entire white hat community to help us to guard the entire system as well. So yeah, so that's kind of like a I guess quick rundown.
That's fantastic to hear. Yeah. Fantastic to hear. And I love how like so thoughtful the whole approach is. And I think when a lot of us like look at such hacks happening across the bridge, like yep, it looks logical, like the hackers are very smart and so on, but there's always a lingering question of but someone, isn't that kind of like a materiality, threshold check, right, for something of this size to happen? And I'm glad this is actually being thought about in the Celer bridge itself.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. We are almost at time, right? So we'll just go on to the last topic, last question, which is really about the future of I don't want to say future of bridging, but rather the future of the interchain experience, right? Because maybe bridging in the future is not like what we saw just on the demo. Maybe bridging is going to be an entirely different experience. And I must say, like, this is not easy. Like for those, I was recently just watching the multiverse movie, right? Doctor Strange, and like it came back to me again. Maybe it's a work hazard, right? I think about multi-world, multiverse, and so on. And even that, right, traveling between the different multiverses wasn't easy for the characters. And you can already imagine, like, in the actual like technical world today, it's not going to be easy as well. But I just want to hear your thoughts, right? Because you think about this day in and day out. What is the future of interchain experience? Right?
Yeah, so like the future of interchain experience, should be much different from what we're experiencing today, right? So like today, a lot of users are still using bridges directly to bridge their phones into things like that. But in the future, what we see is to kind of having this operating system layer on top of all the different blockchains, so that from the user perspective, they don't need to actually worry about where their assets are, or where is that particular application running on which blockchain, or like maybe the application is actually running on multiple blockchains already. So they just care about, okay, here's my wallet, and I have this asset, and I want to use these different blockchains. I want to use this app. I want to use play with this game. So today, like it's going to be a similar trend. History always writes, right? So like today, if you're using your computer, you don't actually ask the question, okay, which CPU is this program running on, right? So like you don't ask that question, because that is hidden away by this kind of entire operating system layer. And we're gonna get there in the blockchain world as well. Like for the user, the concept of kind of a multi-chain world is going to become very, very transparent, and they're going to kind of focus on the application use cases and enjoy the applications. This is where how we can kind of really push the technology into mass adoption with the horizontal scalability that is available, but at the same time, the easiness of interacting with the unified system or unified ecosystem. So this is like where I think the entire industry is going.
Cool. Good answer. And this is going to be so important. I mean, I talk to projects day in and day out, and a lot of metaverses are starting to collaborate together. And I could have my my avatar NFT on BSC, right, the main BSC chain, and I may have to kind of transport and bring some of my assets over to BAS where the metaverse is, and then after that bring it to a concert in another metaverse, which is in another BAS, right? It's going to be it may sound complicated, but I think it's it's always down to how we design, right, the operational layer on it, as well as the UI and UX, right, so that the users are literally just flying over to a concert rather than thinking about, all right, how am I going to transfer all these things in and out. So this is going to be really, really important.
Absolutely. Like many of the cross-chain experiences are going to be part of the kind of the user experience in the future that user doesn't even feel, right? So like, it's almost like I'm migrating from this city to the other city in the game. And then, underlying it might be actually cross-chain transaction, right? But the user doesn't know about that. So that's kind of like the direction we want to see the industry go.
Cool. Very cool. All right, we're almost at time. So, Mo, thank you so much for coming on this program. And I personally have learned much more about bridges. I'm sure the listeners have too as well. So to all the listeners, like, thank you for tuning in, especially if you're from Asia time zone. I know it's late, but I hope you have learned as much as I have. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.